Welcome to the sixth episode of the Influential Wellnesspreneur podcast. My name is Sebastian Hilbert and I'm the Wellnesspreneur expert. I help wellness business owners to overcome the digital overwhelm and grow their business with an effective online presence. And today for our podcast, I have Clare Mann here, the vegan psychologist, author and communication speaker. Hi Clare, how are you?
Good to be on the thing. It was inspiring what you're achieving there. It was nice to have it so eloquently put of what this is all about.
Thank you so much, Clare. I'm really excited to have Clare here today because she is one of Australia's most renowned psychologists on high performance communication. She is also an existential psychotherapist, author of numerous books and training programs. Actually, right now she told me she's writing her current book called Dystopia, The Anguish of Being Vegan in a Non-Vegan World. She worked in over 15 countries and also ran her private practice for over 10 years. I could not go on how Clare has been featured on TV and is chief editor of a digital business magazine. But what I really wanted to finish here with is that I think she's an absolutely lovely person, very balanced and has a beautiful personality. And this in combination makes me really happy and excited to have you here. So let's get right into it, Clare. Tell me, how did you get into becoming a psychologist and especially a vegan one?
Well, thank you. It's always a long journey, I think, for all of us, where we end up, so to speak. And in many ways, those achievements you sort of read out, or that journey for me is very much just says how old you are. So I guess, I started off my life, I left school at 16 actually, and made my way in the world. And I realized very quickly that I was not going to have a life destined to work in the bank. And so I studied and took time out and had a vision of working with people. And so I started studying at 23. And I originally became an organisational psychologist. So I worked with individuals and teams and cultures. And, back then I was really interested in the quality of working life. If we're going to spend that long working, surely we want to do something of value that makes a contribution, that makes us feel part of something, and is done with ease and grace, and we bring our gifts to the world. And it was in those conversations with people behind closed doors, like CEOs and managers, that I found out that they would only really talk their truth behind closed doors. For whatever reason, they couldn't say that their life was falling apart, or they were burnt out, or they didn't know who they were without their jobs. And so I realized they wanted me to take them on a journey I just wasn't prepared or skilled to do. And so I decided to become a psychotherapist. I've been in my own psychotherapy for many years and benefited enormously. And I wanted a therapy that had a level of robustness, but also had a level of rigor. And for me, that was existential psychotherapy, not pathologizing the individual, but taking them on a journey to make sense of their lives, look at the blind spots. And when I ran a private practice for many years very successfully, and I know we will talk about that a little later. But it was in those moments of talking to people now about their lives, they talked about their work challenges, that maybe they could talk to their partners and families and neighbors, but in fact, they had a problem with confidence at work or managing a team. And I had that moment, which Sebastian, I know we've talked about a bit, is that moment when it all just comes together. And I realized that people are functioning well in one area and not another. And it's different for everyone. And I realized that, to me, the key was communication. Is people need to have a real conversation with themselves, and the conscious and unconscious self, and the visionary self as well, and to work through that and become their own best friend and look at their blind spots, but then need to match it with a level of linguistic mastery so that they can be out in the world and connect and be understood and understand other people. And that's where Communicate 31 was born. And I can give you the more story about that later. But this also enabled me, when I became a vegan, someone whose life is underpinned by the non-use and exploitation of animals, and to teach vegans of how to share and celebrate how we create a more compassionate world. So it's, in a nutshell, I guess that's the story.
Very good. So actually your first thought that becoming a psychotherapist and to help better didn't quite connect it, or you had to find this communication aspect as well to help in a complete way. Is that correct?
Well, I'd say to people, and really saying to your listeners, is people often think, well, I've been doing this for a long time. That didn't work, so I'll do this. And it's almost as they leave things behind. And I think everything we do, particularly if we've done it for a long time, is, champion what you know and how can you transmute that into something else. And so for me, it wasn't a case of saying, well, I'm leaving the more business side of life to one side. It was, and doing psychotherapy, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I've been on my own journey of psychotherapy, honored that people tell you the secrets and the dreams and concerns of their lives. It's a very honorable job to have of those holding those secrets and, guiding someone on a journey to be the best they can be. But then to actually realize that people often come into therapy, of course, and the changed individual goes out into an unchanged world. So by marrying the communication and the self-awareness, I think we can be a real instrument for change.
I love that. Absolutely. And totally agree with that. Some situations on this journey, Clare, I'm sure there were some struggles, some difficulties you had to push through. Can you name maybe one or a few and tell us a little bit how you overcame those?
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually wrote this down, actually. I didn't really want to miss that. It's a number of them, and I've actually written down 5. We had a little brief discussion beforehand, but things I had to overcome is one thing is we've got to believe we're good enough. We've got to get over ourselves, the conditioning we've had, the parenting, our society, the fact that everyone says, they might be jealous of us. You've got to believe that it is capable and possible for you to think, feel, and act and be of greater service than you are at the moment. And I always say to people, it was a great day for fools when modesty became a virtue. And that's not to go around and be smug or self-centered, but to don't, hide things from people, say, yes, I'm very good at what I do and I've got a lot to learn. Let's celebrate each other rather than actually playing small in the world and secretly wanting to be out there and contribute in a big way. All of us have a gift to bring. So I guess that was one of the first things. And I wholeheartedly say to anyone in the sort of health services professions is continue to do a lot of work on yourself, both at a physical, intellectual and emotional level. Be the best you can be. That's when we really are an instrument for change for people, I believe. So that's something that I see as something to overcome. And I also went to live in New Zealand for 4 years. And I'd actually moved over there probably 10 years ago. And it was my partner and I at the time wanted to, we bought up a little bit of land and we wanted to build a house off the grid and prove that we could live sustainable, happy, abundant lives with little footprint on the planet. Little did I know that my ego was to take the biggest fall to its knees. And I say ego, i.e., who the heck am I? Because, I'd gained experience and connections and a sense of mastery of what I was doing in my work and life, in both living in England and Australia. And I went to New Zealand and nobody knew me. I couldn't work over there. It was a very small place. The connections I made didn't seem to gel with the sort of ideas or the big dreams I had. And I felt very separate, that actually, how was I going to do what I wanted to do in the world in such a place that I felt at the time wasn't there for me. And when I look back at that, it was such a learning experience. It does us good to bring our ego to its knees. We must hold all these things lightly. And it's not who we are, what we do, but we become what we do in one sense, but it's our experiences, our wisdom. And Tony Robbins once said that, there's good things and bad things that happen in life. And sometimes it's not too much later you get to see which is which. And so that experience in New Zealand really sort of helped me there. And to realize that you just have to keep going. And along the way, I've been stung by people. I've invested in coaching and training with some charlatans that have cost me tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. Or people have tried to take your ideas. And the hurt for me is, the financial hit at the time was, when there wasn't tens of thousands sloshing around to invest in this, you know yourself. Small businesses, they often borrow from their parents, they take loans, they use their savings. On that journey to actually having that flow and finding out what their gift to the world is and monetizing that, which is very important. I know we've talked about this. But it was the fact that people could behave like that. Why do people need to behave like this when there are so many amazing problems in the world that we can provide solutions to? Why do they have to steal other people's things or behave badly? But it urged me on, and I overcame it, and I realized that maybe I needed to do more due diligence on who I was working with and not assume that they would have the same ethical principles that I would. So I think that was a learning. And then to keep going, constantly evolve, and don't say, well, I've done this, it didn't work, I'll give up and go and do the day job. We don't need to do that. And really, if we really want to get big, and this is, I know, your area, we need to automate things. Anything that you need to keep repeating and doing, find a way to do it. Even the beginning of your emails, if you say you've got a standard thing that says, hey, great to hear from you, how's it going? Just automate it and then craft the email personally. It sounds a little controlling, but it's not. We only have so much time. And if we're doing a lot of mundane things that naturally happen, try and automate as much as possible, leaving room for the creative.
Very good, very good. Especially the last one, I think, is something that goes into the technology area. But you said you need to start believing in yourself, believing that you're good enough. Has been for me a big journey, and it still is a learning process. But you also said you have to push to keep going. So what were some things that you remember that you did, or was something that made you feel good enough and pushed forward?
Well, invest in your time and energy in people that believe in you and that champion what you do, but what other people do too. Be around people that are generous with their time, their energy, that you can give to too, of course. But, if we spend our time around negativity, if we watch negative things, I say to people, get rid of your television. I haven't had one for 16 years. How is it possible that, a certain number of programs are going to fit the needs of 22 million people in Australia? It's impossible. It's laziness, and it's sort of, there's lots of things people just blindly watch, most of them adverts, and also the repeat of the negative news. This becomes very negative. We have the internet, we can control that. We can zip on there very quickly, see what's going on in the world. And guess what? It's only about 1% of what's going on in the world. And then we can choose what we fill our minds with. And so don't be around negative people, pass away from them. Don't always tell people the extent of your dreams if they're not able to take that. Say, for instance, family are often our biggest champions. They're often our biggest critics. Our family or brothers and sisters might say, yeah, it's a good idea, but you lost money before, you don't want to do that. And, what makes people feel small is, share part of the dream, but be with people that champion you, but also point out to you, what was your learning previously? Where have you been negligent with an overtrust before people have proved it? Where can you do your due diligence? And also realize that actually we're the experts. We know the best about our businesses, and we give that power away thinking the one day will come and we know it all and it all fit into place and everything will flow. We're that person. And when we overcome these things, and I remember Bob Proctor, one of the American trainers, once saying in a podcast, and he uses finance as a thing, and money is a great instrument to do amazing things, as we know. And it's not that it should be an outcome of our endeavors, not the aim of it. He said, when money comes to you, it will come in such abundance that you'll wonder how it's been avoiding you all these lean years. And I use that, when friendship comes to you, when consciousness, when amazing people and creative opportunities, you'll wonder how it's been evading you. So keep going out there. Don't rent space to doubt in your mind. And, you're a work in progress. Keep going.
Thinking back over my last 3 months now, and hearing you say what you just said gives me actually goosebumps, because that's actually what I have been through. So yes. Thank you for sharing that. There was one thing you mentioned earlier, not today, but a couple of days ago when we talked, how you try to educate therapists and practitioners about online marketing. And that was, I think, after you started your practice. I can't remember. Please, can you tell that story? What happened there?
Of course. Well, when I came back from New Zealand, which now was about 9 years ago, I kind of hit the ground running. I hadn't actually worked in that country for 4 years. I'd been backwards and forwards to Australia and England, where I did have contacts and things. So really what I did amazingly, living off on the side of the hill off off the grid house, was probably lost in all the air miles that I was backwards and forwards. So I was back and we were able to, you know, pay our bills. But I hadn't been working there, so I hadn't been as established. And so I thought the best way is to come back and do what, you know, I believe I can give great services. It's to set up a private practice and see clients. And this is something about collaborating. So when my partner I'm in business with is an IT person. So few great accomplishments are achieved single-handedly. So it wasn't that I was the best therapist in the world. It was the fact that he got me to be seen and known. And that's the thing about collaborating with people. So when I then came back, I was able to become a psychotherapist and a psychologist, and it started to grow. One week, we had 17 new referrals. Now, to someone setting up a practice here in naturopathy or holistic medicine or therapy, they go, oh my gosh, I dreamed for that. Okay. The reality is there are plenty of clients there that all want to see you. The reality is you have to work with getting your message to the world, and just people matching that and saying, she's the person I'd like to talk to. He's the person I want to help me. And that's an ongoing process. Okay, it's not luck, it's effort, and it's becoming also truthful about your message and what's important. But with that in mind, I didn't actually want to see 17 clients a week. At the time, I think about 15 was good enough for me to do a good job and not get burnt out. Preparation, there's studies, there's self-care, and there's trying to find other solutions for these clients, of course. And so we decided that we would take the elements of what had made us successful and develop a program called Creating a Successful and Sustainable Private Practice. Now, this was about 8 or 9 years ago. Actually, the program actually began, if I think back a little bit earlier than that, it was while I was still in New Zealand, and we did an online set of webinars and then came back to Australia and ran some courses. People came to a big course. We got a group of people on there. I did the more people relationship part, how you become an excellent therapist and the work you need to do on yourself and boundaries and how to run a practice in terms of doing it with ease and systematization. And my partner did the IT part and how we get your message to the world and automate. And a colleague of ours did the marketing bit. How do you get out there and say, you know, this is what I do? And not only online, but also offline. And we then, after that wonderful workshop, we ran an online version of that. And we had several people sign up for the webinars and whatever. In theory, with all the demand for people to say, I want more clients, as you know, because you know this is a huge need. People are good at their craft, but they're not good at saying who they are and getting it out there. They just say, give me the clients. I thought they'd come to the door and all sign up, and they didn't. And then why is that? Was there something, we were doing all the right things, it had worked for us. And I realized it was about mindset, is people I talked to, why are you not doing this? Why is this not? They, in some sense, didn't feel worthy that they were able to run, quote, a business, even or sole practice. They thought doing therapeutic work was very heart-centered and they had no right to be in any way seeking a profit. And for many people, it was, it's not so much seeking a profit, it's being able to pay your rent this week. So it was, and they had a view that perhaps there was this greediness and then there was this wholesome and consciousness. And I realized that people weren't ready. So the tip there really is that sometimes our ideas come before the world is ready for them. And we have to modify that and change it. And so when I moved into the language people could understand, which was the quality of your communication is directly linked to the quality of your results. That can fit for my clients, for businesses, for therapists, and we can do it in a different way. So, but I think what, now is ripe time. People are well versed in the fact they've got to use the internet. They're getting clients off Facebook or Twitter or just some sort of chat thing. Someone sends them a private message and say, I love the philosophy of what you're doing. Can I come and see you for, some kinesiology or something? And so I think people are ready for it now, but they still need those skills. They need that mindset and honing their own craft, which is what they're really good at. And they keep keep thinking if I keep doing that, I'll be able to do it. That's only a third of it. If then they need to automate it and integrate it, which we need other people for that, and your advice is exemplary, and also how to market is, i.e. letting people know you're there and what you're about.
Very good, very good. Claire, in looking at, probably you said it already a little bit, but looking at communication, effective communication as a niche for you as a therapist, generally speaking, what do you think is the biggest barrier there for someone who's trying to do the same, or also for yourself to move forward currently?
Sorry, do you mean personally for me in communication or for others?
More for you.
Right. So what is the biggest barrier, or?
Yeah, what is the biggest barrier in your niche for you to?
Right. I'm with you. Okay. I think probably the biggest barrier is finding out exactly where the clients are and what pain they've got and what message. We want to tell people and share with people our craft of what we want to give them. We think if only they could just come and see us, then they would be happy. We've got to speak to people in the language they understand. And so it's particularly when we start to, go to a one-to-many. And I encourage all practitioners to do this, whether you produce a video or a CD or a box relaxation method, you've got to have that one-to-many focus sometime in the future, or else you'll get burnt out. You're literally selling your time by the hour. And there's more people that could get your benefit. So it's finding out exactly how to reach the right people with the right message using the right medium. And a principle I want to share with people, and I've got a little video I produced on this. I can always give it to you, Sebastian, that you can share with people, which is called the window of dissatisfaction. Now, if you think, and I'm visual, so I'm just thinking from the left to the right almost. So imagine on the left-hand side, you've got three different scenarios we're going to give. Is you've got people that you can see that perhaps they might have a problem, but they don't see it. They haven't got a problem. They're not even looking for someone. All right. Let's say someone's got a terrible health problem. They've got awful digestion. They can't sleep. Okay. And they try to go to a natural health practitioner. But at the beginning, though, everything's fine. They're sleeping perfectly. So they're not even looking. And then they enter that middle window, which I call the window of dissatisfaction. They've tried everything, or the doctor that they're talking to isn't solving the problem. We're helping them solve the problem. The sleep hygiene principles they were told back in their training days, that's not working either. But they're dissatisfied, but they're not actively looking. When they move over to the right-hand window, which is I'm looking now, they will do anything to get their problem solved. Now, this could be with any practitioner. Someone comes to see a therapist. First, they don't know they've got a problem. And then another relationship breaks up and it becomes really burning, but they can sort of put up with it, but it's not too bad. And then they suddenly become anxious and depressed and I will solve it now. The problem is if we wait to find or communicate with those people when they're looking, we are competing with all the other therapists and communication trainers and IT specialists. And most people choose therefore on price at that level. What we need to do, and what listeners, I think, and I'd love your comments on this, Sebastian, is we need to speak to people at the window of dissatisfaction when they're getting a bit upset about things, but they're not looking, but they're open to ideas. Or we do it well before and we tease them with the potential of having happier, healthier, more abundant, fruitful lives. Just through, talking our truth, talking in the ways and areas we do. So that if they keep seeing you, you have to keep getting into their awareness. And this is part about, I know you train people online doing things. Just let people know you're there. Give them things. Be generous. So that when they do that moment is, I need help now, you're the first person they think of because you've given them more of you and they don't want to go out there and look at 50 people. And so I get people that like 2 years ago, I heard me speak in an event, or 6 months ago, or they saw something and there was a guy watching me on LinkedIn. And one of the things I do, I've been running a long leadership and communication program, which is self-awareness and communication. And he watched me for a year. He looked at my posts, he watched some videos, and he said, I just wanted to know if your values were aligned with mine. And when I was ready, I rang you and said, I want to talk to you. And I know you train people in this. You've got to have all these people coming towards you, and they've got to gracefully come into your space when they say, I'm ready. We don't go from woe to go. And sometimes when people say, well, I'm not ready yet, be generous. That's absolutely fine. You know that I'm here. It seems to me you've got this problem, this challenge, and what's the cost if you don't get it solved? But when you're ready, let's talk again. And that generosity, as opposed to, well, if you don't sort it out, you're going to have a bigger problem. They'll go, hey, this person's help for me. So
very good.
I guess that is hopefully some good advice.
Very good. And that's when, like, how authentic you can have a so-called sales conversation to be, right? Because it's not really a sales conversation. It's just authentically from speaking from the heart, and sharing what you have to offer. And what you just said, you basically explained why our online growth funnel works so well. Exactly. Because it's exactly that you're building, this generosity and getting yourself out there with the right message and the generous content, you basically build pre-sold customers. But they come to you with no like and trust on different levels, but it's already there, and they're not total strangers. And as you said, they're aligned with your values and they know who you are. And it becomes the whole sales process, what so many people are afraid of, it becomes something very fun.
That's right. Where were you years ago when we needed you? Before we got involved with some people that weren't scrupulous, or weren't scrupulous at all, actually.
I think in the probably in the DDR, actually, that's probably was like, that's where I come.
There you go. That's right. Exactly. But well, that's right. And I think it's, I say to people, we're all salespeople, whether we're with our families, we're exchanging all the time. And for me, selling and marketing is about sharing your love of your passion or service with people that want to solve their problems. It's, I think is often natural health and health professionals, there's a bit of a block about money. And, money is neutral. It can be used to do terrible things and carve up the Great Barrier Reef and abuse, or it can be used in an abundant way where you can do amazing things in the world. You can be creative beyond paying your own rent. So embrace it. See it as a tool for change. And if you've gone into this area of, some sort of therapeutic work in some sort of way, you're doing wholesome work. Doesn't it make it easier when you're not living from hand to mouth?
Very good. Exactly right. Last thing for today, Claire, I want to know your 3 best tips. We talked about all the struggles you've been through, that you identified for people you work with. What are your 3 best tips to overcome those struggles?
Best tips to overcome the struggles is to constantly work on yourself. You're only as good as you believe you are, and also the investment. You can only take your clients on a journey that you're prepared to go yourself. And that is really important. So I always say to people, have you ever noticed when you got a problem, you're always there? So that's really important. And have a big enough why. The late Viktor Frankl said, when he was incarcerated in a concentration camp, when he had lost his family and his wife, and he said, if you have a big enough why, you'll take any how. And so that's really important. And you mentioned the word dystopia, and that's the nature of my new book. But my passion is really about creating a more compassionate world for animals, people, and the environment. And it's enabled me to use the craft I've got, that self-awareness, the knowledge about how people change, the knowledge that actually most people are pretty good. They're in a system in our society, we can have bigger conversations about this one, that actually often stops them with a creative and generous heart. And so part of my craft is to create a vegan world, one that's underpinned by compassion and non-usable sentient beings. And so, but find out what your why is. For me, it's about helping people, for us collectively on this planet, to do something amazing. We're facing unprecedented times. And so, when we come into that power, that's what we can do. So if people, I can tell you what dystopia is if you like, because we keep throwing the word out, but would that be okay, Sebastian, very quickly?
That'd be a good idea.
I think so, because they're thinking, what is this? And it's also, in listening to this for people, is think about, the why I've got here. So dystopia is what I believe a mental anguish that vegans feel living when they become aware of the systematized cruelty towards animals in our society. And that might sound a bit strange to someone that doesn't really understand that and say, well, animals are protected. Well, 150 billion animals per year are used and killed for our purposes by a mere 7.5 billion of us. Just think about that. 150 billion to 7.5. So a lot of it is hidden from us, a systematized superiority we have actually. So I see that dystopia is actually an anguish that the person feels, but also when they try to talk to people who then block them and say it's not going on, even though we give those figures. What I call a trance-like collusion with blocking that and saying, no, the world as it is how it should be. And so I called it that for a number of reasons, is to give voice and to give language and help to people whose life is underpinned by a philosophy of compassion, to extend that, but also because I didn't want the medical profession to pathologize it and actually say this is a condition that needs to be medicalized and therefore a pharmaceutical drug can remove it for people. If we find out about injustices in our society and we don't speak out, and I paraphrase Martin Luther King, it leaves an indelible mark on our soul. So if we become part of something and that are through our consumer choices are causing great harm to animals, people, and the environment, then we should be feeling anxious and upset and distressed by it. And so we don't want to pathologize it. So I created this book, Dystopia, and this term to avoid that, but also have a pathway through. And that book will be out in early May.
Lovely. Thank you for that. I actually just had a realization and thinking about it. It's actually good to feel distress when you don't get a response, if you share a powerful message with someone, because that means that you have something deep within you that makes this message so valuable.
Absolutely.
So, do you have a couple of other tips, or do you want to share, Claire?
Well, if you want to go fast, go on your own. If you want to go far, go with other people. So, learn to collaborate. There's plenty for everyone. Don't be competitive with people. They got in to do that first. I had this great idea. Well, guess what? There's 7 billion people on the planet. We can't service them all. And we kind of get the clients we deserve, and the clients get the practitioners they deserve. And all of us, sometimes, we're students and teachers of each other. So be generous. You don't have to compete. You have to be creative. Be amazing. Give people real solutions. Be generous with your time and your ideas, but also be very boundary. And don't be afraid to put a price on your services. When we don't charge people enough, we all often think that people decide on money all the time. They don't. Some people earn $20 a week and they'll spend $20 an hour, and they'll spend $170 on their hair at the weekend. People spend money on what they want to solve their problems. And when we don't put a real value on what our services are, I think we reduce the spiritual possibilities for ourselves and other people.
Wow. That's I always was looking for a really good answer when a client comes to me and says, I'm afraid of charging more.
Yes.
And I think you just answered it in a very beautiful way.
And if someone says to one of our listeners here, you say, look, I've just put my fees up, there's going to be $100 an hour or something, someone says, and the person says, that's expensive. Now, a lot of people, they feel a button there and perhaps a little bit of irking, oh, did I charge too much? That they make excuses and they try to justify and be defensive. Is one of the best responses, you're absolutely right. But, there's lots of services you could have. And there's lots of other people that would charge different things. It really depends on the level of, communication mastery you're after at the moment. Yeah, it's not defensive. There's a range of things here. You're absolutely right. It's an investment, and that you're going to make in yourself. And it really depends on the level of mastery you're looking in this particular area. So you give the person, you don't have to defend and say all the qualifications and how much it costs you to run your practice. But you have to believe it. When you start believing what you're worth and you put it out there with power, then people usually don't question it. Yeah, I'm also a great person for doing packages. So, for instance, on perhaps the first time when somebody may come to see you, say for coaching or something, you would give a discovery session, and that would be a fee. And then at the end, you say, well, we can either, pay my full fee at this time, time by time, or we'll set some things. Or if you actually put a package of something together, say you would do it for people that are solving things hourly, whether that's a massage, whether it's a naturopath or whatever, if you put those together and pay in advance in one go, I'll reduce that by 15% or so. You know, number one, you get admin and paperwork out the way and say to them, the receipt comes at the end, so don't get into doing weekly receipts. That's part of why you're reducing it. The person emotionally commits to the process, and you feel they've therefore invested in you, in their time and themselves. It becomes much more rewarding to do that work. That's why I'm a person that talks about doing packages rather than move away from the hourly rate as soon as you can.
And it's also then you actually can focus as one who thinks about buying it to the actual value, and not just thinking, oh, what is that person then actually earning per hour?
That's right. That's because you're not an hourly person. It's
yeah, exactly. So
that's right.
Very good, very good.
Good.
Well, Clare, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your thoughts, your struggles, how you overcame them, and the great tips for everyone listening in today.
Thank you very much indeed. And best of luck with everything you're doing. I wholeheartedly support it and wish you'd been there 10 years ago when we needed your services. So maybe we'll be calling on you in due course. I'm certainly recommending you. Thank you.
Looking forward to it, Clare. I encourage everyone to subscribe to the podcast afterwards because, I will continue seeking out amazing people like Clare. There will be links to Clare's websites like communication31.com as well as the Vegan Psychologist.com in the podcast notes. It will be somewhere in the video cast here as well. And I encourage anyone, go out there and seek out Clare. There's some wonderful videos, articles out there you can learn a lot from. So I have done it in the last couple of weeks and it was a great experience. Also, if you're interested in how to do the things that Clare mentioned today, don't hesitate to contact me. You'll also find that in the podcast notes. I want to say a big thank you to Clare for being part of the Influential Wellnesspreneur podcast. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening to her today as much as I did enjoy interviewing her. Join in for next week's podcast on Thursday again for episode 7. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week again.